Iron Man 2 is once again directed by Jon Favreau, and I don't really think I need to tell you who stars in it. Robert Downey fucking Jr. After the events of Iron Man 1, the government now want Tony's tech to use in warfare because, of course, all governments in movies want to do that. The biggest thing they can get and the most impressive thing, they will then use it in the military. They did it in Jurassic World, they're doing it here, right? But Tony has more pressing matters than this. The arc reactor that has been keeping him alive since he was captured in Iron Man 1 is now trying to kill him. There is people from his past who are trying to get him. Everything is going wrong for him. This is his toughest battle after everything that happened in Iron Man 1. This is nothing compared to what's happening now to Tony Stark. See, the MCU's really getting into its stride, and I wondered back then, what would Marvel's first sequel be? It's not been that many movies, yet they've already done a sequel. How is it? Yeah, it's pretty good. Let's talk about it. This movie is a pretty decent story. I think it's much of the same. You have someone trying to kill Tony with a refined theory on his arc reactor technology. But saying that, this movie has got some much deeper elements. As I said in the description at the start, Tony is being killed by the thing that is keeping him alive. He has very dark things going on. He's very disillusioned by his own company. Doesn't really want to run it anymore and thinks Pepper will do a better job. There's many things in Tony's life where he's just sort of trying to evaluate them after everything that happened to him in the first movie. Everything that's happening to him now, he's keeping it a secret. So this is a deep, dark Tony in this movie. In the first one, yeah, he went through a traumatic time, we know that. But he came out on the other side and was like, I'm the boss, I am Iron Man, I'm blah, blah, blah. But he even starts questioning his own reality and his own life in this movie because he just hasn't got much left. He hasn't got much time left. You realise that from the very beginning of the movie. You see him reading toxicity levels of his blood, which is explained really well. It's quite a simple thing. He's got veins coming out of his arc reactor. There's something wrong with his arc reactor. He's obviously dying. It's not the most convoluted story in the world, but it's told really well. Tony's worried about humility. He really is just thinking about what to lay the groundwork for when he's gone. He has a period of hope in the movie. Yeah, his father does help him. Howard Stark is a bigger part in this movie. Tony thinks that he's just this arsehole of a father who never did anything for him, but that all comes in a really nice thing that actually Tony was the future, and his own future due to the technology limits of Howard Stark's time. Tony could then make what he needs to carry on his life. It's a really good movie about humility. It's different in that way, and it's a big risk to have this early on in your MCU. Joining Iron Man this time, we have a shitload more people to introduce into the MCU. Of course, we have Happy Hogan. Tony Stark's assistant is much more prominent in this movie, especially at the start. Jon Favreau really included Happy in there, and it's not a case of I'm the director so I'm in this movie. It was more a case of I like Happy. He becomes a prominent part in Iron Man's life. Pepper Potts finally been given what she wasn't given in the first movie, some actual meat of a story to jump into. Tony makes her a CEO. He knows Pepper is better at this job than he is. He needs her. It's the yin and yang thing. They really need each other to work. It's just not just a throwaway sort of damsel in this movie, and it's exactly what we needed from a really actually preferred Pepper in this movie. We also get introduced to the awesome kick-ass Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow in this movie. I fucking love ScarJo. She's become one of my favourite MCU characters. I love her. I really think that Black Widow has made a name for herself now, but that is a different video entirely to this one. But what an intro to her. Yeah, I think maybe she's a bit overly sexualised as soon as she gets into it. But this is the early days of the MCU, and they didn't want you to cotton on that she was a big part of it. But of course we find out she's with Nick Fury. I loved Scarlett Johansson in this. I'm so glad that she's finally getting her own movie at some point in the next few years. A great introduction to her. She really did help Tony on his way, and her actual, her overarching story coming together with Tony at the donut shop always makes me laugh when he's like looking at her and she stabs him in the neck with like an EpiPen shit or whatever. Loved ScarJo in this movie, a great addition to the MCU that I'm still loving now. Oh yeah, and Don Cheadle has taken over from that shitbag in the first one to be a better War Machine. Yay! Ivan Vanko, of course played by Mickey Rourke, is yet another shit MCU villain, but are we surprised? Mickey Rourke deciding to make him a Russian villain thing, for me, just seems so fucking overdone. His reasoning for doing what he does to Tony, yeah, okay, Ivan's father had a big thing with Howard, but you go around like murdering people with this horde of drones that you've made with Justin Hammer. It seems a little bit over the top for me, especially going the wrong way around Monaco Grand Prix with giant whips in your hands. Okay, Whiplash is a cool villain in the comic book universe, but I think Mickey Rourke made it a James Bond villain in this movie. Just sort of one-dimensional and with a shitty, cheesy accent. For me, got in the way of what Tony had to do. He had to save his own life building a new element. He had to make Pepper the CEO because he had his own existential crisis. He had his own expo to deal with. It seems like he just got in the way. Ivan was more of, okay, I've got all this, but I've got this shit to deal with now. You know, okay, you know, Rhodey takes one of the suits away, and that seems like a big deal. Someone's taken one of my pieces of identity to fill up with all this tech shit with my rival. You'd think, okay, but then Ivan's just fucking James Bond villain in the middle of an MCU movie trying to get his own back in a fucking ridiculous, overly satirized fucking Russian hacker thingy, whatever, with a bigger Whiplash machine, just completely redoing what they did in Iron Man 1 with a bigger Iron Man suit thing. Just move on to a few villains. They get better, I swear. With all this being said, guys, let's get to the bit we all are waiting for, the quantifiable bit. Where does this movie sit on my list of Marvel movies? Well, Iron Man 2 sits in at number 15. So, there it is, guys. There is the third movie in the MCU. Time to move on to the next one. In the next video it will be The Mighty Thor. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, please don't forget before you go to like, share and subscribe. Press the old bell. Until next time, this is your friendly neighbourhood ginger guy saying, Ginge out!